geometry students, this is Mrs. Hefty here. Today we're going to talk about section 3.4, which deals with the equations of lines. In section 3.3 we had talked about slopes of lines and perpendicular slopes and also parallel slopes, and we're going to bring that into this lesson. So first let's talk about the slope-intercept form of an equation. I had talked about that briefly in the previous lesson. That is y equals mx plus b, where the m is the slope, and we talked about that in our last lesson, and the b is the y-intercept. Now, you don't have this picture, this graph in your notes, but let's talk about that for just a minute. So if I was looking for the equation for the line in my graph, I would see right here is my y-intercept, and my y-intercept is 0, 3, and then I could find my slope by doing my rise over run, and boy, this doesn't look like a very good line here. I'm going to go down 2, or 3, excuse me, and back 2, so I'm going down 3, and then I'm also going back 2, so my slope is -3 over -2, and we haven't talked about that. When you have two negatives, then your slope is a positive 3/2. So if I was looking for the equation of this line, it would be y equals 3/2 x plus 3. Right now, also what I wanted you to note is that when you have a y-intercept, make sure you get this in your notes, people. When you have a y-intercept, the ordered pair is going to be 0 and then a number. When you have an x-intercept, here is where it's crossing the x-axis, and that's at -2, 0. So do you see when you have an x-intercept, x is going to be the number? So x-intercept is going to be x and 0. So keep those in mind. Make sure you wrote those down, because in a few minutes here I'm going to reference that. All right, next thing we wanted to talk about is point-slope form. And I know that you had learned this in Algebra 1. That's when you're given the slope, which is m, and you're given a point, which we'll call x1 and y1. So when you're given a slope and a point, you can use your point-slope form, and then you can manipulate it around if you want to get it into your slope-intercept form. The point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m, and then x minus x1. So if I was using my point-slope form, I would take that x and I would write it there. I would take my y1 and I'd write it there. And then I'd take my slope and I would write it right there. And your equation would have an x and a y in it, just like your slope-intercept equation has an x and a y in it. All right, let's take a look at our examples. Write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line having the given slope and the y-intercept. Okay, so let's look at number 1. My directions aren't very good, or given points, I guess, or given points. So in number 1, I'm given 2 points. So I need to write it in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to need to find my slope first, my slope. So I'm going to do y minus y over x minus x. So my slope is going to be 10 minus, or 0 minus 10. And then I'm going to take my x's, 2 minus 0. Okay, so now my slope is -10 over 2. So my slope is -5 over 2. So I was going to write it in slope-intercept form. So y equals -5 halves x plus b. So I'm looking for my y-intercept now. Hey guys, I gave you one of the y-intercepts here. That's where y is a number and the x is 0. So that's my y-intercept. So at this point, my b is 10. So y equals -5 halves x plus 10. That's not always going to happen. In this situation it did. So call yourself lucky there. Let's look at number 2. You're given the x-intercept is -2 and the y-intercept is -1, and you need to write the slope-intercept equation. So you need to write y equals mx plus b. So you're going to need your slope first. In the previous problem, I used ordered pairs to do the slope, y minus y over x minus x. So I would like some ordered pairs again. My x-intercept, that means the x is -2 and 0 is the y. Y-intercept means y is -1, so the x is 0 and y is -1. Now at this point, I can do my y minus y over my x minus x. So my slope is, I'm going to take 0 minus -1, 0 minus -1, and then I'm going to take my x's, -2 minus 0. Okay, now I'm going to do my slope. 0, really minus a negative is a +1 over -2. So that's my slope. Now, I already have my y-intercept. So I'm going to be able to write that there, and I just found my slope. So my final answer is y equals a -1/2 x minus 1. And again, that's one of the easier problems as well. Let's move on to the next problem. Write an equation in point-slope form of having the slope of half through 3, -1. So I'm doing point-slope form. I'm going to write the equation down. Y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. So I'm going to take my slope and I'm going to write it in for my m. I'm going to take the 3 and it goes in for the x, and -1 is going to go in for the y1. So just be careful on that. Y minus -1, because a lot of kids will see 3 as first and then they'll just plug it in the first spot. That's not right. That's supposed to be the y. Equals, my slope is half, and then I'm going x minus 3. And now this isn't a final answer. You need to take your minus -1 and make that be a +1. At this point, they're asking for point-slope form, so this is your answer. All right, let's move on to the next one. Number 4 says, write an equation in slope-intercept form for a line perpendicular to the line y equals 1/5 x plus 2, and it's going to go through 2, 0. You're not going to be able to just graph these people and come up with the equations. You must do the mathematics behind them. So even on the previous problems, if you thought, hey, I'm just going to graph those on a graph and I can get it real quick, that's not going to be allowed. You're going to get those wrong. So make sure you're learning the mathematics behind them. I need to write a slope-intercept equation. So I need to write y equals mx plus b. So I need to find my slope, and I need to find out where it crosses the y-axis. I need to have it be perpendicular. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is find the perpendicular slope. We learned that in our previous video. If the slope is 1/5 and you're looking for the perpendicular slope, you flip the slope and you change the sign. So my perpendicular slope, this is 1/5. I flip it, which is 5/1, and I change the sign. So my slope is -5. All right, so now my equation is y equals, my slope is negative 5x plus b. I need to find the b yet. You are given, has to go through 2, 0. There are two ways to get the equation. You can go ahead and plug in this x and this y and plug in that x right there and the y right there. That's the first way. The second way is to use your point slope form, and I can talk about that as well in just a minute. I'm going to use this equation right here, and I'm going to plug in my y, which is 0, negative 5. I'm going to plug in my x, which is 2. I need to figure out what the b is. So I have 0 equals 10 plus b. Oh, yeah, and then I'm going to move my 10. 10 equals b. So now my equation is y equals negative 5x plus 10. Okay, so I said there was a second way. So this was my first way. I said there was a second way where you could use your point slope format. And let's talk about that because some people say, hey, I like that idea. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to use y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And originally I found my slope to be negative 5. And then these are my points that I'm using right here, 2, 0. So I'm going to go y minus 0 equals, my slope was negative 5, and then x minus x1 is 2. So now when I look, y minus 0 is y, and I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to get negative 5x, and I'm going to get plus 10. So do you guys see here? I've gotten the same equation. I've just done it two different ways. You don't have to do it both ways, but I thought I'd introduce both ways there. I have one more problem for you to do. It's not on your notes sheet. You need to pause the video, take a minute, write this down, and if I were you, oh my goodness, try and squeeze it in there on the side. It's going to take a little bit, so. All right, find the slope-intercept equation for a line that goes through negative 2, 4, and 8, 10. So the first thing I need to do is find my slope. So I'm going to take my y's, 4 minus 10. I'm going to take my x's, negative 2 minus 8. My slope ends up being 4 minus 10 is negative 6. Negative 2 minus 8 is negative 10. So my slope is 3/5 when I reduce it. Now, I need to find my equation, slope-intercept equation. So it's y equals mx plus b. You're going to plug in your slope right there, in for m. You can use either point to find the b. I'm going to use the 8 and the 10 because I don't want to use negative numbers. If I can, I'm going to use my positives. So my y is 10 equals 3/5. 8 is my x, and then plus b. At that point, I have 10 equals 24/5 plus b. Now I need to move my 24/5 minus 24/5 minus 24/5. Now, I don't have a calculator right now, but I can change 10 to be 50/5. So I don't really need a calculator. I found my common denominator. 50 minus 24 is 26/5 is my b. And so my equation is y equals 3/5 x plus 26/5. Again, you could have used that y minus y1 equals x minus x1. And you could have plugged your slope in there and one of those